this video I'm going to be talking about my National M-1 Tricone Resonator. I'm going to give you some of my thoughts, the pros and cons, things I've discovered about it after about 2 years of owning it and countless hours playing it. I've had this guitar about 2 years, maybe a little over 2 years now, so I've had a lot of time to kind of like reflect on it and get a lot of playing in, discover the like quirks and things I like and don't like about it. So this isn't a review like I just bought the thing and I'm going to tell you all about it. No, I've put some mileage on this thing. So my like sort of past playing resonator guitars, I have a Gretsch single cone, like alligator biscuit, I think that's the name of it. So instead of, this one has the tricone in it. That one's actually the same kind of wood body, but it has the single cone resonator cone. And I've got a lot of great use out of it. I still play the thing, but a couple years ago I was able to justify, I guess, getting like the actual National, and I found this one for a really good price on Reverb, so I just sort of just said fuck it and I got it. And I like, just my initial impression, and even today I still feel this way, this is really like, no joke, the most like inspiring guitar I've ever picked up. Like I don't have much experience playing really expensive, like high-end boutique handmade guitar, so maybe they're all like that, but I can tell you, just for this one, every time I pick this thing up, it just, even just to like hold it and like just look at it, it's the craftsmanship is just amazing. The playability and feel of it is incredible, and that's something that I think the lower end resonators don't really have. But I mean, you get what you pay for, but it's something that, like, I think these National guitars are just, they're a joy to play, a joy to look at and feel. Like, everything just feels like great on this thing. As far as like the sound of it, and that's where it really even takes off even more from that, because there's something about resonator guitars in general. I've never heard a recording that comes close to even like professional grade, like world-class players. Like, I've never heard a recording that does it justice. You have to hear them in person. But it's something that's just, they just invoke this, like, they just tickle this nerve for me. That's like really inspiring sound. But these National ones, especially just because they're so well built, I think they do it, like that. These extra overtones and harmonics and things you get from it, it's just, I've never played anything like it, honestly. So I'd 100% recommend it if you have the money to get one. So this one is as you can see, it's mahogany body and neck. Now, a lot of these resonators are like wood or metal bodies, so they're like steel or brass. But the reason I gravitated towards this one, there was a couple things. Like, for one thing, they're just lighter and they're balanced. They're like, when they sit in your lap, they kind of just, kind of hard to see, but it's like you don't have to do too much to keep it sort of steady. Whereas like the first time I played the metal ones, that was something that was almost like a turn off, because it was body heavy, I guess you would say. So like, as it's sitting in your lap, you would have to hold it up almost and brace it, which I'm not a huge fan of with guitars. I like them to just have as little, like, I don't want to have to deal with other things, like comfort wise. I like to be as comfortable and balanced as possible when I'm playing, so I can just focus on the playing and not be like fighting the guitar and instrument the whole time. So that's one thing that I love about the wood ones. Now, it's obviously going to be a different sound, and if you're really after that, kind of trashy, like resonator sound, then obviously there's probably no comparison. But for what I wanted, the balance of it was definitely a huge plus. And what's really cool about the wooden ones, they give this really balanced sound that isn't, it's like a really cool best of both worlds with the resonator qualities, the overtones and harmonics, but you also get kind of like a typical, wooden acoustic sound, which is really cool. So I think it's a really unique sound. And honestly, I think the wood ones just look really cool too. Something that I noticed from the first time I picked this one up, honestly, I don't know if this is how National just typically builds them, or I bought this used on Reverb, so I didn't really, it's not like a custom-made thing or anything, but for me at least. But the nut width and the neck is pretty like wide for what I used to. It's pushing like classical guitar territory. It might even be, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it might even be what like a classical guitar is. But it has the really nice like V carve to it, which I really like. But the nut width is something that was a real, because I play primarily like electric guitars, so coming from that, sometimes when I go over to this, it takes me a bit to adjust to it, and you get this really wide string spacing because of that, which is really nice once you're used to playing it. But I have to like adjust every time I pick it up, because I don't have any other guitars that are. I have like a nylon string, but I don't get to play it that much, so it's a bit of an adjustment. But what's really cool is if you finger pick like me, there's so much space and room over here to finger pick that it's like a dream to play once you sort of warm up to it. But that's something to think about. Like, I don't know if, like I said, if that's a typical thing that these guitars have. I haven't played very many of them. But it's something to think about if, I know, like, I'm typically somebody who's very, like, almost too neurotic about that kind of thing. Like, oh, what is it, like a 0.1 millimeter, like, bigger than I'm used to? I don't know if I want that. But since I just bought it online, I didn't really have much of a choice once I got it. And the guitar is just so cool. I just, have dealt with it. Another thing that's was really noticeable when I first got it, the string tension, especially if you're putting this thing into like an E standard tuning. This is like I should say, it's not a baritone model. This is like the typical range. Like I think it's either 25.5 inches, or it might even be slightly longer. I don't know what their standard is, but it's their kind of standard scale length. The baritone would obviously have much longer scale length and wider frets and everything. So what happens is, especially when you put acoustic strings on this, if you're tuning it up to E, the string tension is it's really tight. I wouldn't want to ever have to play it like that, honestly. And that was something that was kind of a initial like turn off from it. I was kind of like upset that it was like that, but I figured out ways around that. The action's pretty high, but that's typical for these resonator guitars. Now, if you're playing slide primarily, like the action and really high like string tension is not going to be an issue. But I like to play I like to fret notes. I really don't like to have a guitar that's set just for one specific thing. I like to be able to play everything on every guitar that I have. So the way I got around that, it's not really an issue. It was just something that I didn't, I'm not really fond of with a guitar. I put these Elixir Resonator strings on. So the string gauges, the gauges are, it's the highest string is a 16 and it goes up to a 56. So you're able to, it's a, especially for the higher strings, that's a really high gauge. But what you're able to do is drop tune it down a couple steps. So I keep it in either like a C sharp standard or a D standard, I guess you would say. So it's either like, a full step or a step and a half down from like a typical tuning. And what that allows me to do is so when you drop the strings down, first of all, it gives it a very cool, a very unique sound because it's just a drop tune. You're so low, like you're pushing the baritone territory almost. But it keeps the string tension way more usable for my taste. Everybody's different. You might have stronger hands than me. You might like the higher string tension, but I find that I tend to like it a little bit, like a little bit more give to it, especially if I don't play acoustic primarily. So I'm used to more the real, the ease of like an electric, like a Strat or something. So, so that was like a way I got around that. And just it was a personal preference, but just as a recommendation, these Elixir strings with I don't know, I guess it's the Polyweb one. I don't know, I haven't tried the other one, but this has like a different alloy than a typical acoustic, or maybe it is an alloy and the regular ones aren't an alloy. But whatever it is going on with this type of string, the tone is very warm, and it complements this guitar really well, because these guitars with the resonating cone setup, they can be super punchy and loud, which is totally fine if that's what you're after. But something that's really cool about when you use this type of string, and obviously if you're tuning down, it really fattens up the sound and like warms it. And then so coupled with the wooden body, it's a really cool sound. So I would highly recommend that setup if you're into like changing, experimenting with strings and that kind of thing. But other than that, again, these are all just personal preferences. Obviously you can play it perfectly fine in E standard and it'll sound amazing. It was just something that once I did that, it really sort of changed the game with this guitar, and I fell in love with it even more. So like I said earlier, I have a Gretsch Resonator, which, was only a couple $100. I don't know what they've gotten to now. But so it's a huge difference between the price ranges, but I would say that you do get a lot more when you pay like for like a national type guitar. I personally, I play guitar all the time, and so it was like a justified thing for me, but for some people, maybe not. If you're someone who's just getting into resonators, maybe hold off on spending the extra money on the national just for now. Try something like a Gretsch, or there's even like the Republic brand, which I think is a little more than Gretsch typically, but they're very similar to national, like setup wise and everything. But again, it's all going to be personal preference. But I mean, as far as my thoughts on this guitar, this is, like I said, it's the most inspiring instrument I've ever picked up, and every time I play it, it just feels amazing. And it's so cool that it's just this, there's no other electronics or anything creating such a beautiful sound. It's just this instrument. So I think that's something that I always look for in a guitar. If like I could just pick up the thing and it'll sound amazing on its own, that's a guitar that you're really gonna like. And I'm never, as far as like at this point, this is like my favorite guitar that I have just because of that. So highly recommend if you're in the market.